in reality, Nigel Richards is the best player in both dictionaries, which should tell you they're similar enough that if you know the words for both, you can figure out how to make good decisions in either lexica. Nigel Richards is proof that you can be, if you're good in one dictionary, you can figure out how to be good in another dictionary strategically.
Well, it looks like we're getting underway here. Wasim is drawing his tiles, and we are. Oh, and he's picked up a blank right from the get-go. Oh, it looks like a very strong tile rack. Is there a bingo in this rack? It looks like there should be. What do I see here?
Yeah, so I will admit my Collins knowledge isn't as strong, so I think Wharfie is a Collins word that would play. WHARFIE. I didn't know that one, though.
Well, if he plays so aggressively as put the F on the double letter score, that'll make this game a lot more fun.
Yeah, we saw that in the afternoon yesterday. Notepad was available. Ori Swift had Notepad as his opening rack. He did not elect to put the P on the double letter score to open up a juicy S lane. But we'll see how Wasim plays it here. So Wharfie and also Faither is the other.
Sammy has a bingo lined up on his rack, which is just a whole lot of fun because it's not particularly high probability. And it's a nice word for all of our internet spectators to appreciate with their own upvote. So I think this game is going to start off in a bombastic fashion.
Yeah, and so can people in the chat like upvote after Sammy plays upvoted? You know, if you aren't subscribed to the Scrabble Twitch channel, I feel like Sammy's literally telling you to subscribe at this point. I mean, it would I guess upvote isn't quite as good of a bingo as subscribe to do that, but it's close enough. Give your love to the Scrabble Twitch channel chat.
And the comment in the comments, folks are pointing out that Wharfie doesn't really make it possible for upvoted to be played, which will be a little bit of a pain for Sammy for sure. I mean, to have that opening rack and not be able to just unload it in any fashion is unpleasant, to say the least.
Yeah, so with that, Wasim does take an 82-point lead, and yeah, if you're Sammy here, obviously, it's really tough to divert your attention from upvoted once you see it, but you have to do something here. So what would you do, Sean?
Well, first I would console myself because not only did he not get a chance to play his perfect natural bonus, but his opponent just started with a killer blank bingo. So that is you got to really put that aside and say, okay, it's very early. You're gonna make a play. You're gonna score the 20, 30 points that you can score, and try to chip in here. So now, see, the thing is that we know that the P, the V, the U, these are among the letters that are probably in Sammy's interest to use. He might look at something like paved or a word through the R, maybe like prove. I don't think upvoter is probably not valid at this stage, but so I think that trying to unload a few of those letters is probably within his purview right now.
Yeah, up dove is definitely a possibility as well to the E in Wharfie. That would get rid of. Also, the U can be a clunky tile, so I could definitely see him going that route as well.
Well, if you're going to look at up dove, then the idea of playing upvoted just as a non-bingo is also an option.
Yeah, I guess would you prefer the leave of ET or just E there? Just because upvoted versus updove, the difference is well, I guess they're the same amount of points because the V is doubled in updove, but not upvoted. So I guess it would depend on the leave mostly.
Yeah, I think I like upvoted in the sense that it just makes the board that much more open another lane because you're trying to catch up, and it's spreading things up nice and wide. But it looks like he's looking for Vout. This is an interesting choice. I feel like, Oh, he's going for routed. Okay, so this is a pretty strong play, I think. But it could go south. I mean, he's got the E on the open E on the board, so and another E. He's creating another lane for another E. So maybe he's not concerned so much about giving up E's at this stage. But it's certainly a candidate play.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I feel like it's one of those turns where there are a lot of very similar plays, and if you're Sammy, I think his logic is, I want to keep the right side of the board open for potential bingos. The V is something that will obstruct a lot of bingo lanes, so why don't I play it on the left side of the board near the clunky W and H lanes, and I could have the E and the I potentially stay open for future bingos.
Well, it's worked out for him. So certainly he knows something there. Although I do think that kind of covering up the R lane was perhaps something that could have I would have preferred not to do. But given that he's done that, I think it's worked out great, and he's very likely now to bingo in the following turn. Wasim is sitting on a clunky rack. He's got the J, but a J, he doesn't have any obvious two-letter J words that are going to make it easy to score big points. So that's something that he's going to have to factor in, and he's looking at a few different options. It seems like he's considering something through the D potentially. He's looking at Melik, which looks like a good play. So the idea that he's able to see past the J to look at his other tiles and pick up that, I think that's a really good eyesight for him, because Melik would be a strong choice with the C landing on the double letter score and the whole word being doubled.
Yeah, I mean, and Melik would go parallel to the E and the D in Vouted. That's definitely, I think, a very strong play. It scores much more than J plays. I think he had the call-in Jilgi or Jilgi, I don't know how to pronounce it, set up previously for a bit off of the I in Wharfie, Jlgie. But that's 12 fewer points. So I think, yeah, Melik seems very reasonable here. And he looks like he's shifting around his tiles still. Maybe he's going back to Jilt. That makes sense. So that scores a bit more than Jilgi, and I think it's a more closed play. And I think if you're up, it makes a lot of sense to force your opponent long term to find ways to score. You don't want to open up a C on the triple necessarily.
I understand the rationale of the play, but I don't necessarily feel like I agree with the choice, just because the CMEG combination to me is a little bit too negative for playing that defensive. But I think either way, Potties was coming down, and that means that, or Tiptoes, put a nice anagram for that, but Potty scores more definitely. So this is a good comeback play for Sammy, and we're going to keep a close game here now. What can Wasim do? He's got words like caged and game, and he's going to have to look for compound words and words through the T and the O, and it's going to take some time to really work through all these combinations, because these letters together can form a lot of different structures of how the letters actually combine and which letters can go next to each other. So I think we're going to see this turn take a little bit of time.
Yeah, this feels like a kind of turn where you need to really think, just because spotties is also a word, I think, in Collins. And so it will be, right, you need to start thinking about, do I need to address that lane right away? If so, how do I go about that on this board? If not, then what is my best option? As Sean mentioned, caged, which plays the D in Vouted, is a really nice play in terms of getting rid of the clunky G tile, scoring a bit, and keeping a good leave as well. You could try to do something else entirely on the right side of the board. So it would be interesting to see first if he's going to try to directly address the potty spot to make spotties, and if not, will he continue to make probably his highest equity play in the bottom left, or will he try to address the right side of the board?
Yeah, I wouldn't bother trying to address the right side of the board, only because any of the plays that address the right side of the board almost create more trouble than they prevent. So That's the risk. You don't really know whether you made the situation better or worse when you play an overlap in some of that in that specific area, because you can also open up the triple word on one side or other bingo lanes. So as it turns out, Sammy doesn't have beautiful tiles, but he's able to make a beautiful play by finding a nice double-double, unloading a lot of those bad tiles, and getting a score with otherwise poor a poor rack.
Yeah, reroute's a really nice idea. So we'll see what other 4 tiles Wasim will pair with his E, D, and M, but the D will go on the back of reroute, and that could help him a bit here. So, but we really need to, I guess, wait and see.
Folks in the chat are checking out, was rerouter good? Nope, definitely not. But maybe someday, depending on what versions of routers get invented, I suppose, and who becomes proficient at rerouting. Okay, well, we've got foamed and the V on the rack, so looks like he's playing an overlap for quite quickly. That's an interesting choice. Definitely a good score. Could have also seen the D hook on reroute, as you mentioned, and maybe moved or famed or something out there. I thought might be intuitive, but he seems to be choosing an overlap that scores well. I think I might have preferred the play in the top right corner, just because it controls the shape of the board and it takes away that hook if by any chance, which it seems has happened. It looks like Sammy's sitting on dirtily, and so that should be a big play for him.
Yeah, and I think this goes to show you in some ways, back to what we were saying of how no matter which dictionary, you always need to consider what you're scoring, what you're keeping, and what you're giving your opponent. We can see that here. We've seen more defensive style games in NWL, I think, in this tournament than the Collins games we broadcast, but it really would have been advantageous for Wasim to have made a play like moved. Now, he isn't necessarily that he's not an oracle. He can't necessarily foresee what Sammy's going to do, but I think there is a lot of merit to move there.
But he can't quite get ideative down, but he's arranged it on his rack. So now he's looking at trying to see what he can do with that VIE. He could open up the board with Vi and F. He could play through the L and try to unload a word like evil or vile first few points, but again, balancing that rack. So it's going to be quite a choice here, because if he has a way of unloading 3 vowels, I think that'll be better for him, but he may not have a great option for that. Do you see anything, Morris, that would allow Wasim to both balance his rack and score a few points?
Yeah, I don't think completely balancing the rack. I guess like Alive would maybe balance it the most, but that would be so risky through the Ellen Dirtily. I think Sieve or Sive, I never know how to pronounce some of these Collins words. CIVE, starting with the C in caged, seems pretty natural here in a lot of ways, just because it, scores 27. AEIT has some synergy if you pick some consonants, and doesn't open anything too crazy for your opponent. So it will put him back slightly in the lead and just make it a tempo game, which I think is what he needs to do here.
Yeah.
As he plays it.
And the V is a good consonant for bingos, so maybe that'll help him if he does draw a few other consonants. There's a chance he could play there.
Yeah, we want some N's for Venetian or something like that.
Veritrin. Well, meanwhile, Sammy has the W and Q on his rack, and he doesn't have the play of Waqf to make that okay. So, that's going to be challenging. He's got, with the good thing about W and O, they combine fairly well. Usually you can find a little overlap to score some points. You don't necessarily have to play the Q right away. He's got the play of and woe, or some combinations like that, like low up there. He doesn't seem to have.
Oh, I was going to say, keep in mind the Spotty's hook is available here for him to play QINS or QIS.
Oh, of course. Yes, that would be wise. But he's chosen not to play there. He's just going to play it as an overlap.
36.
Yeah, so QIS, QIN, yeah, this is interesting. It really basically, I think on any turn, if anyone isn't taking the spotty spot, you can assume they're not holding an S most of the time. They might be holding a blank some of the time, but you want to address that spot if you're holding an S. So it's a risky move in some ways for Sammy, but it's a calculated risk if I had to guess.
Is there a chance? Is there a chance that Sammy's forgetting that Spotties is valid?
It could be. I mean, he played potties willingly, and it scored the most points. But he might have just not thought about it when he played it, and we'll see if someone gets that at some point. I mean, right now, Tania is an option to the left or to the right of the I, L, and Y and Dirtily, but it looks like Wasim is going for slightly fewer points, but a more synergistic leave, playing A, L, and AY.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Wasim's choice on this one. I think that there's not really a lot of upside to turning over so many tiles right now. One blank has already been played. Oh no, Sammy's proving that he's well aware that Spotties is there, so he's able to wow us with that and balance his rack again, and looks like he's continuously scoring. And the pressure is going to start picking up. But I think it looks good for Wasim. He's able to find a spot for Sinuate or Aunties, but I don't know if.
Yeah, it was very prescient of Sammy to block the S spot this turn. It would be really interesting to hear why he kept it open a turn ago and why he decided. I mean, I guess he had two S's this time, so it makes it even easier to depart with one. But yeah, it just feels like he took a very cool, calculated risk when he just played QIN, not blocking the triple. The S is a great tile, but scoring 13 fewer points and leaving those worst case scenarios open is you need to be very sure of yourself to make a play like that.
Yeah, he may have also been trying to read into Wasim's previous plays, like how likely is it that Wasim is holding an S, and also thinking around, well, if I can score with a QIN without necessarily having to use my most potent spot, then I can score again. And it seems that that's the chance that he took. Now for Wasim, since Sinuate Aunties doesn't drop, he's looking very evidently at maybe just a U-fish even, or a short play that'll allow him to play again. Is Vonti's good with the U?
Von T is definitely good. I always forget whether some of these take S's. So there is a colon in those letters, but it is not. It is not Vonti's.
Okay, yeah, just double checking. So
yeah, but Vontier is the extension.
For sure.
Vonti,
yeah. So this creates a situation. You can play Vow even and just create a bit of another shape to that lane bottom row, and probably be in a good shape for the following turn. I don't see anything else that's really jumps out as a solid play. But there's definitely multiple ways to fish. I don't think it's likely that he's going to do anything more than a 2-tile play.
Yeah, so I mean, the one other option. So I think that idea Sean highlighted, Vow, is really strong. Well, Wasim thinks here, maybe we could flip to our Quackle corner quickly just to sort of show what's going on. We're trying to, just because we've been talking a lot. So Vow down here is what Sean is pointing out. One other option is he could do Yuva above for one more point off of the H and R and Wharfies. I mean, Vow, it's just much more of a proactive move, though. Even though it scores one fewer point, when you're holding letters that underlap the U of the N, the S, and the T, that will just allow for bingoing so often for you. So I really like this idea by Sean. And maybe let's flip back to, unless Sean, did you have any other ideas that you want to show the viewers here?
No, I think this is going to be one of the turns where, as we can see, Wasim is thinking it through. He just wants to make sure what he can do, any other options to consider. But I think ultimately he'll come down to either Vow or Uva. If the game is close, I think it's one of those things where maybe you could consider just GU. I mean, that's also something that you could potentially do, but I don't think that the 6-point sacrifice is really worth it. At the end of the day, I think Vow is best.
Yeah, so maybe let's flip back to the regular screen. Thanks so much to our production team for adding all these cool scenes. We love to show Scrabble, and we're only trying to improve here. So, uh, yeah, he's thinking a while here. I'm guessing he like really just wanted to make sure he wasn't missing a bingo. We've talked about a few times in this tournament how budgeting 25 minutes is a really important skill within itself once you know so many words. And we'll see if now that he's approaching the 10-minute mark, if Wasim will have to rush a bit on future turns. Because once you don't see bingos, I think you basically have to decide between Vow and Yuva and which makes sense for your objectives here. Uh, so, yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what he's thinking about, but he is taking a lot of time at this point.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in Sammy's rack, he has the Z. That means he's got plays through the O spotties for a solid 48 points or more. He can he can really have a versatility with the Z and on the Collins board. He's got the underlaps of Wow as well, so really not likely that that he wouldn't score well with the Z in the following turn. But on the plus side for Wasim, if he does play Vow in the bottom left corner, it's most likely not going to be the case that Sammy plays there in that row at that time, because he doesn't really have much that works under there except for the N and the S, and his letters don't combine in such a way that those work very well as the first letter in the word. So this means that the line may stay open for him, even if Sammy scores at 40 points. If Wasim is able to bingo in the following turn, he would be able to draw almost even.
Yeah, and the chat is pointing out maybe dumping just the U is an idea he's considering, or it looks like he's now considering Uni. But just dumping the U, since Tisane is just such a good leave for bingos, it seems like that would make sense. He'd be 100% to get it if he opens the right lane. So maybe if the chat's pointing out IU, AYU, that would be an option, for instance, if he decides to just play off the U. But he does go for Yuva here. It looks like it took a lot of time to get there, but he decided, I want to score a few more points maybe than IU. I don't want to go too crazy and open up something really big like Vow would do. And we'll see if that's going to unfold in his favor.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the good choices there. So whether it'll work out for him is another thing. And he's drawn into interns, but that one might not play.
Well, Vintners should play to the V.
Oh, very good. Yeah, that's the one.
And Sammy quickly plops down Zen. Nothing wrong with that. Scoring 44 when your opponent is starting to get low on time.
Actually, interns does play overlapping dirtily, so
ooh, nice.
He's going to play right now. Yeah, so this is even better.
Yeah, and interns will get the game to basically be a tie game again, I think, or not tie, but within 10 points. And so it will fork the board, so it'll open bingo lanes in completely opposite sides of the board, and it's pretty easy bingo lines. One that's an 8-lane ending in an S can get most 7-letter words, are all nouns and verbs, and then the TI can take a lot of back hooks.
This game is full of excitement.
And the chat, I think, has found boonless for Sammy through the S in intern. So we'll see if he sees that. It's given Sammy's strength as a player. I'm guessing he'll find it at some point. Though it could be one of those words that, just like overwords and outwords we talked about yesterday, less and ness words definitely can be tricky to remember if you're making them up or not. But it looks like he has boonless arranged at this point. My guess is he's just checking his mental dictionary of I'm 100% this is good, right?
Maybe that, or maybe just making sure that he's not missing any sevens that he could play that might also be defensive.
Fair enough, yeah.
But yeah, he seems to be taking a good look. What does this leave for Wasim to do? Well, if the O gets slotted right above the triple word, you might
Which
be able
it
to play
will.
yield. Yeah, one of the O's will.
Yeah.
One way or the other. But it could give yield a nice underlap, whether he gets to do that or another thing that scores well. He should be able to kind of stay within arm's length. So it's not, although a bingo can come down for Sammy, it may not be without a price to pay.
Yeah, and one blank is still unseen, so it's going to be really hard to fully block the TI spot unless you put, and so that's off of the T and dirtly and the I and interns for bingos, unless you literally do a one tile play next to the first I and dirtily. Otherwise, you're going to be if you try to play something that you make three-letter words next to TI or IN in dirtly and interns, you're often going to open up an even more dangerous lane, given that there's a blank out and you can pluralize most things. So while he's thinking about this, maybe we can show what that would look like quickly. If let's flip to the Quackle corner for a sec. So after boonless, let's just say, or I guess, let's just give Wasim some of the tiles. I actually forget the exact track. I think it was something like this. And so
that's correct.
So if we do Glade or Eyelid, I'm just going to give him Glade. And Sammy then tries to block with something like Nod. I'm not going to do that. I'll just do No. Something here would still give a really juicy bingo lane on the triple all of a sudden with a blank unseen. So it's going to be hard for Sammy to block that spot. He could do something like in here to block, but that will be tougher.
Yeah, certainly it's going to be interesting. And he does not bingo, actually. Whether that was a conscientious non-bingo or not, it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and if we could flip up the board. Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah.
I don't think hoaxless is valid, so it doesn't look like Sammy's draw is going to bingo following turn. He's gone with Bon, or Bon, and I guess Wasim doesn't know how fortunate he is not to have that bingo come down, but he's going to be able to still score because it's why it's a great scoring tile. There is a option to just play Yi and Jilty, right? And Jilty good?
Yeah. There's definitely. You're talking about you. Wait. So sorry. Which place are you saying?
I was just checking if Jilty was good. Oh, sorry, no good. Sorry, ignore me. Yeah. Double check that. Just only Jolty, but so he'll have to find play like where else can he just completely just deal with the white? He's going Yodel. Okay, that's a strong play. I think that he's turning over tiles, trying to race to that blank.
Yeah, I might have heard Yogi there, just because the G is a bit clunkier than the D. But
he may be also considering that that TI lane was there and just trying to make that a little muddier. But yes, Yogi would have perhaps been stronger. So often Some players maybe feel less confident to give up the ease. So that's a consideration as well. But
Yeah, and Sammy drew a really, yeah, he drew axe holes, not an actual word, but uh, so he might try to play off his X here. Something like ox below the G and the E encaged could naturally uh, come down and save a really strong leaf. One thing that Yodel did do, and maybe that's something Wasim wants to do here, is it does obstruct that lane a bit that I was talking about earlier, the TI lane. Yodel, uh, you'll need to pluralize that. So there is now only one really good bingo lane, that lane, the 8 lane with the S in interns. And I guess the N in interns is pretty good too. So uh, the Yodel spot really did close down bingoing potential, and maybe Wasim senses in a close game that Sammy is pretty close to a bingo.
yeah, and which one he chooses is kind of the question now. Could be as simple as bearings. We don't know whether that's the case. He may be looking at. He looks like he's looking at breaking.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I would. So the key
that's
thing.
more defensive. That doesn't overlap. Put letters right above the triple word.
Well, right. I would not know if breaking takes an S or not. And there is one S unseen to Wasim as well. So if
Yeah.
he thinks Sammy is close to a bingo, yeah, breaking is a good play. I would maybe play just to be extra safe. And I guess only maybe just because Wasim is now down by 34 points. So he'll need to score. He'll need to keep scoring. He can't play a play like rebaiting, which I would be pretty sure didn't take an S regardless of dictionary, just because.
Yeah, in Collins, a lot of the ing words do take S, and breaking, I think that can rationalize pretty well as a noun. But he could be doing breading. There's a lot of different little variations they can kind of come up with in order to make that a little safer. It looks like he's doing blearing.
Yeah. So that helps us a lot. Yeah, if he played the BREA, we would have needed to figure out if it's like a D, a K, an M. It would have been hard. So thanks, Wasim, for playing something that everyone on the stream knows what the blank is of blearing.
Yeah, so there are some underlaps to the AA that could help Sammy score some points, but will it be enough to close this deficit now? It's going to be challenging. We may need to see what the unseen tile pool looks like.
Yeah, so if we look at the unseen tile pool from Sammy's perspective, so Sammy's now down, as you see on the screen, by 30 points. He doesn't necessarily need to bingo to win this, but there are only 2 tiles in the bag as of the 9 unseen tiles from Sammy's perspective. Wasim uh, will draw 7 of them. And I'm looking, Wasim still hasn't drawn tiles. I wonder if he's on hold. Someone pointed out in the chat the classic Kremwen game that Sammy once played against, I think, Gomon in a semifinals of a world championship. And what happened was there were 2 blanks in the word crewmen, and accidentally one of the players, I forget which one, inverted an M and a blank and and made Kremwen instead of crewmen. And so I think maybe Sammy is making sure what is the blank? Is it worth challenging? So I think he's maybe learned his lesson since that classic game and just wants to make sure that blearing is the correct word in there.
Some folks pointing out that asphalted is valid, which doesn't quite fit there. That's would have been so crazy cool through the alt on the board. But the other thing that people are looking at is plashit, which is defined as a small pond or pool. So interesting comments from folks. Plashit also doesn't look like it'll play, but there are definitely ways for Sammy to score quite a few points and use up a lot of the tiles and maybe end up going out in the following turn. If he's able to do that, he might be able to catch Wasim if Wasim's not able to score enough. But with Wasim holding the C and the K, it's likely that Wasim will score some points. So how exactly to play this end game, it requires really for Sammy to score some points and theoretically score more in the following turn and go out. So a bit of a challenging scenario for Sammy to be able to close this deficit if there's any way to do it.
Yeah, and as the chat points out, there are two O's in the bag. So it will be interesting to see how Sammy approaches this. Often you want to play one tile here, and he could play one tile next to the TI in Dirtily and Interns, since he does have the last S. I think I don't know all of the Collins fours, so you might have to help me here, Sean. Is there a play you see slotting one tile there that wouldn't give any backhooks aside from an S? To create a unique S spot.
Well, I don't think the tip will give any hooks, right? Unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, so TP wouldn't be available. No eyes left, you're saying, right?
Right. So, but if he's going to draw into an O, I don't know if that will work out.
Yeah, so maybe should we flip to the Quackle corner quickly to just see what we're kind of considering here? So the idea is maybe.
Oh, folks are saying tip will set up loathes, which would. I mean, the thing is, it is blockable, but depending on how, Wasim attempts to block it, he'd have to be. It would be difficult to know exactly what to do now because there's a lot of possibilities with the 9 unseen for Wasim. He's quite have to do quite a bit of thinking, and he has 4.5 minutes, which is not a ton of time. So
let's play this out for our viewers who are newer. So if Sammy plays tip here, and I'll make the correct 2 letters here. So this is Wasim's rack. Wasim will have to sacrifice a lot, most likely, because he will see that loathes should be available, even though there's going to be one tile in the bag. He'll be able to deduce, even with not that much time, that loathes is available there, and you want to block that. So, but then you need to start making a play like cup, for instance. Well, actually, that does give CH in Colin. So, yeah, it will be tougher to make a play that will completely block this area, because Sammy, even if you let's say he makes it, what would be a play you would play here, Sean, to block?
I think cup is the most intuitive play, but the CH concern is there, but then you got to think, well, which letters could follow the H? And then the S could follow, the T could follow, but HS and HT don't necessarily combine that well in that order. So that might be a big thing. But whether he makes that point sacrifice you're showing here, Sola for 54, will that allow Sammy to make up enough deficit to then go out the following turn? I think this becomes a fine-tuned little math game that has to be figured out, and that's going to be tricky, and depending on what Sammy does and how quickly he does it, he can put the pressure on Wasim to have to work that out all of a sudden.
Yeah, so I think, and so a play like Sola will now win the game. Since tipped is also validating Collins, Tesla should also win, or all of its anagrams, Teal, Tails, Stella, Steel. So, yeah, there will be a lot of winning plays for Sammy here after tip, regardless of Wasim's ability to block there or not. So I think that should be the idea. Hopefully he sees that. Let's turn back to the game score as Sammy does place a letter there, it looks like. So he plays the T there, interestingly. So similar idea. I wonder, he has to be looking at the tile pool and realize, he's switching it. He might switch it, but this will be an awesome find by Sammy.
Just going back to the T.
So he likes the T. This is interesting. So we haven't played this out, but he will have Schlep, I think, at a minimum, if Wasim has to block that area above. So that should score a similar amount to win. He won't have a bingo though in the pool, I guess, based on this. But uh, all that matters is since there are two, since this will leave one in the bag. If Wasim sees any bingos with the 8 tiles, well, I guess yeah. Actually, never mind. It will. I don't think there will be any sevens with uh, Plash and two O's. But if anyone in the chat sees a bingo,
The only thing about this whole thing is that although I understand very much that Sammy's got to kind of be careful and choose his play carefully, now that he's telegraphed that he's considering playing a setup play over there, he's giving Wasim a bit of a head start to start thinking of what to do. So, given Wasim's limited time, I think it would have been better to play this a little closer to the vest and then just suddenly play it and hit the clock. So there are these things that go on, and of course, maybe that was his intention, and then at the moment he wanted to put it down, then he has to give it a second thought. So there's a lot of complexity to that, but the gamesmanship is very key in this.
yeah. So I think here the fact that Sammy sees this idea, I'm guessing in the next, like if he has 5 minutes left, the next 3 minutes, he will figure out what the right tile to put there will be, and I think uh, I think so. He's going back to the T. He must be looking at. There must be enough consonants on Wasim's rack where he thinks the T gives him a disadvantage more often than playing off the T versus the P.
Well, maybe thinking if he draws a C, he could play Chapels. That's also a combination that could be a thought process for him.
Yeah, so this will be interesting. Wasim does not have a lot of time to figure out how to respond to this. I mean, it will score so much, regardless of there being a bingo there or not, if Sammy can make a play there. So Wasim might think he has to block there anyways.
Well, he might play Gummit. That could play 4 tiles, and that's one option. It's not great from the standpoint of the fact that it's leaving letters, but then if he draws no, which he would, then that would leave Monk on his rack. Sorry, it would leave Conk on his rack, I think. Yeah, so that's a possible way to go about this, to just kind of play a lot of tiles and make it as messy as possible up there. Unfortunately, even if he does that, he can't really do much about plays that go down, which is a real difficulty, I think. There may be other ways to deal with the entire location. I wonder if there's a way that he could play through IN on the board.
Yeah, this will be interesting. I mean, so maybe Ick is an idea here. ICK off of the Iron Dirtily. I don't know. It's this is going to be a tough position no matter what. And he plays Mac. Very solid idea. I mean, he's going to get out a lot of the time, and that does score 30, and that will give him a nice 57-point lead. That seems like a really good idea here.
Yeah, that's a good way to go about it. Score the points. If you're confident your opponent is not going to come back with an actual bingo right through, then you're putting that range in there. And I think he may have worked out that the unseen tile pool was not conducive to a 7. So, if he figured that out, then that would be a good way to almost guarantee that he can take the hit and keep moving on.
Yeah, and so if we flip to the Quackle corner quickly, there is exactly one win available for Sammy per the engine. That would be Hale making tight. And so let's just play this out quickly for the viewers at home while Sammy figures this out. So, and he might be able to see this. So Hale, so there will be no way for Wasim to go out. So Nog will score the most points. And then the P and the S will allow for Spalt and Zent to go out. So he needs to see that to win by exactly 1 point. It will be somewhat tough, but he might be able to see it. So that's what you have to watch for in these next 4 minutes, basically, or 3 minutes. And so let's flip back to the board and see if Sammy can find this sequence. Oh, is hail not acceptable anymore? It might have been. Uh, so someone is. Oh, okay, never mind. I think someone is saying that might have been removed as a word. Apologies if so. And if that's the case, then I think he will have no wins.
Well, on the other hand, if he plays it thinking it's valid or not, and Wasim doesn't know that it was removed, that could also be interesting.
Yeah, so I apologize to the chat. This was removed recently, and I will update my quackle before the next round. Apologies here. Turns out, yes, that word was removed in the past year. So uh, take back all that analysis from the past 2 turns.
He looks like he's going with heels.
Yeah, so it scores a lot, but as so, and it looks like it sets up op as well, so that's a really nice idea. Uh, but I think it won't be quite enough, given that the even higher scoring invalid 2-turn sequence wins by exactly 1 after Nog, which Wasim has ready to play. This will be slightly short. But it was a great idea by Sammy.
He's not yet decided. He's not committed. Still got a minute left. He's thinking about something. We'll see how this goes down. Now he's looking at some shorter plays, maybe.
Yeah, this will be interesting. But it looks like he's now going on the other side for Schlepp, maybe?
Is that a 51-point play?
Yeah, I think that looks right. 51. Yeah, if you played helps above, that would have been 54. But Schlepp is going to be 3 fewer, given that the P is doubled instead of the H.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like he hits his clock for Schlepp.
430 each.
Good game by both players. I mean, you really can't criticize too many of the choices. Whether Boonless was I think it looked like an intentional choice not to bingo, and maybe it didn't work out in the end for Sammy. But overall, I think all of these plays were quite justifiable.
Yeah, and the chat points out that this actually leaves Ungot as a possibility for Wasim to go out. Nog and Ungot are the 2 wins available here for Wasim, so he might just play Nog anyways if he isn't 100% on Ungot. It will win by 1 point, but yeah, we'll see if he does see Ungot and if he pulls the trigger on it.
Yeah, one of the concerns is that even if you figure out I have a 1-point win, then you start to wonder, what if there was a miscount earlier in the game that I lose this game on the recount? And so that consideration may make one want to make sure that there's that margin. And then, of course, you've got to be confident then that Ungot is also good. And he seems to see Ungot. And I think that he's probably going to end up playing Ungot. The way he put it together looked like someone who was doing it with purpose.
Yeah, so he has it arranged, and he has 50 less than a minute left, let's say. And yeah, I think you just have to be sure of Ungot if you're going to play it. And so he's not going to play that. He's going to unlog. Is that valid? Oh
Uh-oh.
my god. Well, this has to be an insta challenge from Sammy if Wasim does play on log. He hasn't hit Wasim has not hit his clock yet. He has under 20 seconds now, so this will be crazy. Okay, he flips it. Okay, wow. Whew, that
All
would have been
right.
crazy.
That's a relief for. It will be relief for Wasim when he takes a look later, and a relief for the viewers who wouldn't want to do that. This is getting a challenge anyway. That's all right. Um,
Yeah, so it will get the challenge and this will end the game. So uh, a beautiful 449 to 424 win will be the final score after this comes back acceptable.
yeah, a very interesting and well played game by both players, with a number of bingos coming down and complexities to some of the decisions. So I think we got to see this day start off with some good Scrabble.
Yeah, and it was great Scrabble, and I mean, this just really shows you how international the game extends to. People are shouting "Rep in Pakistan" for Wasim. Wasim, the Pakistan scene for Scrabble, especially its youth Scrabble scene, is getting larger. And Sammy now lives in the States, but originally from Nigeria. Really great player, and there's a lot of great players in the Nigeria scene as well. This is why a lot of people love playing Collins, just to be able to play players from a lot more of the world. But we've seen great play in both Collins and NWL. As mentioned earlier, we'll sort of rotate back and forth with Collins and NWL depending on who is who we're able to get as commentators these next few rounds. Speaking of, thanks so much, Sean, for filling in last minute. We really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. And I just wanted to note that, speaking of the Pakistan Scrabble scene, Wasim being a coach for so many young players has actually brought in a lot to the scene. So kudos to him for winning this game in a tight battle. Kudos to Sammy for playing very well and making it a fight to the bitter end. And then, but also to both these players for being great ambassadors for Scrabble. So excellent stuff for round one, and looking forward to the rest of the rounds today.
Yeah, so next round we will have an NWL game, so stay tuned for that, and we'll take a short break.